The secretary is his secretly married wife, and Mr. Fu gets teased until his legs go weak every day. Chapter 1: The Tempting Secretary. Huanyu International, CEO's office. The man wore gold-rimmed glasses, a tailored suit, and had a cold, aloof expression. He sat upright in his office chair, his gaze fixed on the woman crouching at his feet. If one looked closely, they would notice a hunting fever in his eyes, like a graceful yet ferocious beast. Sheng Yuyue felt an overwhelming fear, as though there was nowhere to hide under his piercing gaze. But her usual stubborn, never surrendering nature refused to let her give up easily. Her hands slowly crawled up the man's thigh, gently caressing it. Feeling the solid muscle beneath his pants, she couldn't help but apply a little pressure, squeezing it. It's really firm. The man's deep, inscrutable eyes remained fixed on Sheng Yuyue. Secretary Sheng, if it were any other woman, do you believe you would already be a one-armed warrior by now? Rumors had long circulated that Fu Yunting was an aloof, obstinate perfectionist. Some even claimed that he didn't like women at all. Many women, who tried to approach him with ill intentions, had their arms ruthlessly broken by him. Over time, no woman dared to come near him anymore. But Sheng Yuyue, over the past few years, had been the only woman to dare challenge him again, unaware of just how violent he could be. Strangely, even though her hand, painted with a nude pink nail polish, had already nearly reached the top of Fu Yunting's thigh, it hadn't been broken yet. Mr. Fu, you wouldn't. Indeed, Fu Yunting was also surprised. For years, whenever any woman touched him, he would feel an instinctive repulsion, and he would uncontrollably push her away, with enough force to snap her arm. So, when Sheng Yuyue squatted beside him, pretending to pick up a pen, and placed her hand on his thigh, Fu Yunting was already prepared to throw her away. But unexpectedly, he felt an unexplained spasm in his heart and a certain part of his lower body. It was as if someone was teasing his sensitive spot with a feather. It was incredibly itchy, and he couldn't resist scratching it. He wanted to see just how much of this teasing he could accept from this secretary. Sheng Yuyue's hand continued to climb upward, her tone full of confidence and flirtation. Snap. She unfastened the metal buckle of his belt slowly. Her movements were deliberate, as though she was purposefully leading Fu Yunting into her trap. Fu Yunting grabbed her hand as she tried to undo the zipper, his gaze dark and unreadable. Secretary Sheng, I hope you're ready for the consequences. He swiftly pushed Sheng Yuyue onto his desk. Her form-fitting professional A-line skirt was pushed up to her waist. When he saw the black line of her thong hanging there between her crossed legs, a rare smirk tugged at his lips. It seems Secretary Sheng came prepared. Sheng Yuyue showed no signs of embarrassment. Instead, she boldly wrapped her arms around Fu Yunting's neck and pulled him closer. Did Mr. Fu bite the hook? The man's answer came as he pushed her down with no mercy, his voice low and heavy. It was unclear whether he was answering her question or simply sighing in response to his own desires. Sheng Yuyue thought that after watching plenty of similar videos and stories, she was well prepared, experienced, and confident. But she never imagined that this first time would hurt for more than she had expected. Chapter 2: Lurking. Sheng Yuyue stubbornly held back all her emotions. But the more she resisted, the more it seemed to pique Fu Yunting's twisted sense of amusement. She went from taking the initiative at first, to finally becoming passive. As she faced a large floor-to-ceiling window, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the glass. Seeing her own dazed look, her face flushed even more. But she was never a woman to get overly sentimental. After a moment, she turned her embarrassment into motivation. The two of them seemed like evenly matched opponents, subtly testing each other. The setting sun had painted the sky red, and its light streamed into the office, complementing the flush on her face. Finally, Fu Yunting, having had his fill, released the woman who had been confined in his arms since the beginning and walked into the rest area. Sheng Yuyue watched his figure, pouting. Stupid man, if it weren't for the fact that I'm strong enough, I would have been sent to meet my ancestors by now. She straightened her disheveled clothes, shook out her hair, and left the CEO's office with an air of pride. As soon as she stepped out of the office, she let out a quiet sigh. Oh my God, that was really intense. Back at her desk, she gathered her things, grabbed her bag, and left for the day. When Fu Yunting came out of the rest area, he had regained his usual cold, obstinate demeanor, as if the man who had been out of control just moments ago was a different person. There was no one else in the CEO's office, but on his office chair, he found the thin strip of cloth that had been on Sheng Yuyue's body earlier. Fu Yunting disdainfully tossed it into the trash bin. Sitting back at his desk, he resumed the work that had been interrupted earlier. Sheng Yuyue returned home and immediately retreated into the bathroom. She removed her business suit, revealing her bruised body. Submerging herself in the warm water of the bathtub, she let the heat soothe her aching muscles. With her eyes closed, she thought about her plans over the past few months, which were now gradually falling into place. She had been recruited by Huanyu International based on her strong resume, and had been appointed as the CEO's secretary. Though she had only been working there for 3 months, from the very first day, she had deliberately created opportunities to make herself noticed by Fu Yunting, yet always managed to avoid giving him any reason to criticize her. After all, she was the CEO's secretary, and it was perfectly normal for her to frequent the CEO's office. Fu Yunting couldn't find fault with her. That afternoon, she had gone home at lunchtime to take a shower and change clothes. When she returned to work in the afternoon, she used the excuse of delivering documents to enter Fu Yunting's office again. While Fu Yunting was signing something, she intentionally dropped the pen she was holding right by his feet. Pretending to pick up the pen, she was actually one step closer to implementing her plan to seduce Fu Yunting. She hadn't expected to succeed on the first try. She thought at least she would have to endure some humiliation and might even get kicked out of Huanyu International. Who would have thought that the rumored cold and abstinent CEO would fall for her teasing so easily? As expected, all men are the same, vain and easily enticed. Here was a man with a beautiful little wife, yet he still liked to stray. And she was Fu Yunting's actual wife, legally married with a red book. For the past 3 months, she had been lurking by his side, and yet he still had no idea. It was no wonder Fu Yunting didn't recognize her. Even Song Chi, who had met her before, didn't recognize her. Before applying for the job, she had specifically arranged for someone to get her a new ID card. Using her excellent makeup skills, she had completely transformed her appearance and assumed a new identity. Now, she was Sheng Yuyue, the secretary of Fu Yunting at Huanyu International. Chapter 3: The Unseen Newlywed Couple. 3 months ago, at the marriage registration office, Sheng Yuyue had already been waiting at the door for an hour, but the man she was supposed to marry hadn't shown up yet. According to her grandfather, the man was Fu Yunting, the CEO of Huanyu International and the current head of the Fu family. They had never met before, but since childhood, they had been promised to each other in an arranged marriage. So, as soon as she returned from abroad, her grandfather directly arranged for her to come here to register their marriage. Although the Fu family was a prominent name in the capital, for the bride to wait at the door for an hour before the marriage registration, that was too much. Even someone with a good temper, like Sheng Yuyue, was starting to get angry. Did he think just because he was Fu Yunting, he could treat a woman this casually and disrespectfully? The Sheng family was not someone to be bullied in Beijing either. Just as Sheng Yuyue was about to leave, a Rolls-Royce stopped in front of her. A man in a perfectly tailored suit got out of the front passenger seat, looking about 175 centimeters tall. Was this the man she, the proud daughter of the Sheng family, was going to marry? This was the head of the Fu family, Fu Yunting, who controlled Huanyu International. How could he be so different from the rumors? Wasn't he supposed to be a cold, abstinent, handsome CEO? Was this really him? Are you Miss Sheng? The man asked, approaching her. Sheng Yuyue scanned him up and down without hiding her impatience. Are you Fu Yunting? No, I'm Fu Zong's assistant. You can call me Song Chi, he replied. Where is Fu Yunting? She asked, adjusting her posture. Her patience was wearing thin. She had waited for an hour, and now all she got was an assistant. Fu Zong had something urgent to attend to, but the marriage certificate is ready. Please follow me inside to sign, and you'll receive your certificate, Song Chi explained. Sheng Yuyue widened her eyes in disbelief. Although she had been abroad for years, she knew that for a marriage certificate to be issued, both parties had to be present to take a photo and sign the document. Fu Yunting must have been so unwilling about this marriage that he didn't even show up on the day of the registration and had the certificate arranged without any ceremony. Well, at least this saved her some trouble. Song Chi led her into the registration office, and not long after, Sheng Yuyue found herself holding a small red book. She opened it, and it almost blew her mind. The photo was clearly digitally composed, but the quality was so good it was impossible to tell. While she was still studying the freshly printed marriage certificate in her hands, Song Qi had already placed Fu Yunting's certificate in a safe spot. He then took out a bank card and a piece of paper with an address and phone number written on it. "Madam, this is the address of your marital home, and here is Fu Zong's personal phone number. This card is Fu Zong's supplementary card. He instructed that you may use it as you please." Sheng Yuyue took the bank card and the note from Song Qi without much interest and walked straight out of the office. If she had to keep listening to this assistant talk about Fu Zong this and Fu Zong that, she was going to be driven mad. As soon as she got into her red Koenigsegg CCR, her grandfather's call came through. "Little girl, did you get the certificate?" As soon as she answered the phone, her grandfather Sheng Zhuhan's eager voice came through the receiver. "Grandfather, how much do you dislike me that you couldn't wait to marry me off?" Sheng Yuyue thought about how, just after her return to the country, her grandfather had used a token from when he and Fu Yunting's grandfather secretly arranged their marriage contract in their youth. The only wish of Fu Yunting's grandfather before he passed away was for Fu Yunting to fulfill the promise made back then and marry her. Fu Yunting's grandfather was the most respected person in the Fu family, so this marriage arrangement had been set in motion. And this was how they ended up as an unseen newlywed couple. Chapter 4, The Marital Home. Little girl, although we don't need to rely on the Fu family, your grandfather and Fu Yunting's grandfather, Fu Yaonan, were sworn brothers. I always thought that after all these years, everyone would have forgotten, but since this is Yaonan's dying wish, we should honor the promise. Sheng Zhuhan's voice came through on the phone. Sheng Yuyue was actually very averse to such arranged marriages, especially those involving parental promises, but she had never had any expectations of marriage, so when her grandfather asked her to honor the agreement and marry, she didn't oppose it much. Her grandfather was getting old, and his wish was simply to see her married and settled before his passing. For her, fulfilling that wish felt like nothing more than a trivial task. Of course, if she had to marry, Fu Yunting was not a bad choice. He had money, looks, and was rumored to be a cold, abstinent, and ideal type of man. However, after today's events, Sheng Yuyue couldn't help but sigh. As expected, he was indeed a perfect specimen. I know. You've said that at least 100 times already," Sheng Yuyue responded, switching her phone to speaker mode, tossing it onto the passenger seat, and starting the car. The car shot forward with a whoosh. "Did he take you to your marital home?" her grandfather asked, causing Sheng Yuyue to slam on the brakes. She had almost forgotten. She was already married and needed to live with her husband now. If she went home, her grandfather would definitely notice something was off. "Yes, I'm going now," she replied, her tone resigned. Good. You two go back quickly. Make me a little pudding to play with soon." Her grandfather cheerfully hung up, leaving Sheng Yuyue with a sigh. She grabbed the bag from the passenger seat, took out the note inside, and entered the address into the car's navigation system. 40 minutes later, the Koenigsegg pulled up in front of a villa on a mountainside. She got out of the car and walked into the villa. Soon, a butler came out to greet her. "You must be madam. Welcome home. I'm the butler of the villa. You can call me Uncle Tian." Sheng Yuyue nodded, surprised. Fu Yunting had skipped out on their wedding registration, but he had already arranged everything else. "Madam, may I show you to your room?" Uncle Tian asked politely. Sheng Yuyue nodded again. "Yes, please. This is your and young master's room," Uncle Tian continued, leading her into a spacious, well-furnished bedroom. "Since today is your first time here, and we didn't know your preference for daily necessities or clothing brands, we've been waiting for you to settle in before arranging things for you." Though Sheng Yuyue also came from a wealthy family and had her share of servants, she had to admit that Uncle Tian's attention to detail was impressive. It was clear that the staff from the Fu family were of high quality, providing excellent service. "Okay, I'll make a list of things I need later. Please have them arranged, Uncle Tian," she responded. Although Sheng Yuyue had a proud nature, she wasn't rude, especially when it came to people like Uncle Tian. From the moment she stepped inside and saw his kind and respectful demeanor, she felt a genuine sense of warmth toward the butler. His attentiveness made her feel more comfortable and respected in the unfamiliar environment. Uncle Tian seemed taken aback by how courteous she was, despite her seemingly difficult-to-approach appearance. He had expected her to be a bit aloof, but in fact, she was quite polite. He quickly developed a high opinion of her as the new mistress of the house. With Uncle Tian's careful arrangements, Sheng Yuyue settled into their villa on the mountainside. She wasn't sure when Fu Yunting would return, but honestly, she wasn't expecting much. A man who could miss his own wedding registration was unlikely to return to this villa anytime soon. They were destined to be the most unfamiliar couple. Chapter 5, Secretary Sheng, take it off. The next day, when Sheng Yuyue arrived at work, she happened to run into Fu Yunting in the company lobby. She was wearing a black skirt suit, but her legs were still sore from the day before. She had swapped her heels for flat shoes today and was walking very slowly. Fu Yunting glanced at her out of the corner of his eye before heading straight for his exclusive elevator. Sheng Yuyue clicked her tongue. As expected, scumbags are the best at pretending they don't know you, as if the man who had growled in her ear the day before wasn't him. Rolling her eyes, she dragged her nearly exhausted legs toward the employee stairs. Inside Fu Yunting's private elevator, the doors closed, and the man inside subtly lifted the corner of his mouth, the faintest trace of a smile. When Sheng Yuyue entered the office, she overheard a conversation between the cleaning lady and the other secretaries in the secretary's room. She walked closer and heard one of them exclaim, "What? Tea bag?" It suddenly occurred to Sheng Yuyue that she had forgotten her tea bag, which she had specially changed into, in her hurry to leave the day before. "Secretary Sheng, you often deliver documents to President Fu. Have you noticed any suspicious people?" Lisa, another secretary, called her over. "Is she talking about me?" "No, nothing," Sheng Yuyue replied, trying to distract them, hoping the office gossip would quiet down. But just as she finished speaking, the others looked at each other awkwardly. "Secretary Sheng, come in with me," Fu Yunting's cold voice rang out from behind her. She spun around quickly, and there he was, standing at the door to the president's office. Forgetting her embarrassment, she quickly straightened her skirt and followed him into the office with a proud step. "President Fu, what can I do for you?" she asked. Fu Yunting took off his suit jacket and hung it over the back of a chair, sitting down in his office chair. His eyes never left her, as if trying to see right through her. "I'm young and impulsive. Right now, I need to take care of some physiological needs." "Secretary Sheng, take your clothes off," he said, his voice low. Sheng Yuyue almost thought she misheard him. Was he treating her like breakfast this early in the morning? "President Fu, I'm still sore from yesterday," she said, inwardly cursing him, but using a coquettish tone and a shy expression as she spoke. Fu Yunting sat back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he assessed her with a hawk-like gaze. "Is that so? Well, then let me check," he said, rising from his chair. He walked over to her, lifted her chin with one hand, and bent down, his handsome face coming closer to hers. Sheng Yuyue thought he was going to kiss her and involuntarily shut her eyes. But instead, he released her chin, straightened up, and returned to his cold, unapproachable demeanor. However, if she looked closely, she could see the faintest trace of a smile in his eyes. "Prepare the collaboration plan for the Kaiser Group. We'll be going on a business trip together tomorrow," he said, dropping the words before returning to his desk to review some documents. Sheng Yuyue knew she had just been teased by the man but couldn't say anything about it. After all, after sleeping with him yesterday, she had left without even wearing her underwear. She had thought he would set some rules or at least draw a line between them. But to her surprise, he didn't mention anything about the events of yesterday, as if it had never happened at all. Chapter 6, Unfinished Business. Sheng Yuyue was busy from morning till night. She had to prepare the materials for the meeting with the Kaiser Group the next day. On top of that, Fu Yunting seemed to be deliberately making her run errands. One moment, he asked her to make him coffee, then he sent her to buy lunch from Rui Zhai, and finally, he even had her go to the supermarket to buy some tea. While cursing inwardly, Sheng Yuyue reluctantly ran errands for Fu Yunting. Who could she blame? She had brought this upon herself. As the eldest daughter of the Sheng family, she could have stayed home managing the Sheng Corporation, but instead, she had come to work at Huanyu International as Fu Yunting's secretary, swearing to win her arrogant husband over with her secretary role. She had successfully slept with Fu Yunting the night before, and according to her original plan, she should have made a grand exit. But last night, she had revised her strategy. The best revenge would be to make that arrogant Fu Yunting fall in love with her, and then kick him to the curb once he was head over heels for her. The greatest insult she had ever suffered in her life was probably having her groom not show up on their wedding day. Even now, 3 months into their marriage, her new husband hadn't once set foot in their home. Sheng Yuyue wasn't the type of person who would let herself be bullied. However, she also had patience. She managed to control her anger, disguised her identity and appearance, infiltrated Huanyu International, and even became Fu Yunting's secretary. Carrying lunch for two in one hand and a large bag of little umbrellas in the other, she entered the CEO's office. Fu Yunting looked at the woman before him. The heat made beads of sweat appear on her forehead, and her chest heaved with each breath. His eyes, dark as a deep pool, followed the trail of sweat from her neck down between her breasts, stirring a heat in his chest. His Adam's apple moved as he swallowed hard, closing his eyes to try and suppress the stirring in his body. This was insane. He had never been interested in matters of the opposite sex, but after yesterday, his curiosity had been piqued, and it felt like he'd opened the door to a whole new world. But even so, he never intended to have any other relationship with his secretary. Especially since he still didn't understand what Sheng Yuyue's intentions were. For a newcomer who had only been at the company for 3 months, she had dared to ignore all the rumors about her and actively flirt with him. He didn't believe her claim that she had no ulterior motives. Having her by little umbrellas was merely a test to gauge her reaction. He hadn't expected her to disguise herself so well. She truly acted like a professional secretary, obediently running his unreasonable errands, and when she placed the entire bag of little umbrellas on his desk, she looked like she had the utmost professionalism. He almost wondered if the seductive woman from the night before was even the same person. After putting down the things, Sheng Yuyue spoke. "President Fu, if there's nothing else, I'd like to leave." Then she swayed her slender waist and walked out, her long wavy hair swaying with each step. Every movement seemed to be intentional, and it all looked like a well-calculated display. Fu Yunting took a deep breath, swept the entire bag of little umbrellas off his desk, and shoved it into a drawer. He pinched the bridge of his nose, leaning back against his chair, and then turned to face the large floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked at the sky outside, which seemed so close, and took another deep breath, trying to calm the restless urge in his body. Damn it. He should come back for more last night. Then, he wouldn't be left with such an unfinished craving now. Chapter 7 Mr. Fu, you scared me. After returning to her workstation, Sheng Yuyue gulped down a few gulps of water and returned to her work. Although she was a rich girl, she was different from those spoiled rich girls. Her mother died of dystocia when she was born. Before she was 5 years old, although she did not have the love of her mother, her father still gave her good memories. But after she was 5 years old, her father seemed to have changed into a different person. He threw her to her grandfather to take care of her and became more and more absent from home. Until one day, he came back with a girl, saying that she was her sister. At that time, she knew that her father had already had a child with another woman when her mother was still pregnant with her. Grandpa drove him and her so-called sister out of the house, indicating that Sheng family only had Sheng Yuyue as a granddaughter. From then on, Grandpa took care of her while managing Sheng's company and trained her as the successor of Sheng's company. She lived up to her grandfather's expectations and began to take over Sheng's company when she was in college. Fortunately, her grandfather Sheng managed the company very well, so she could manage everything in the group without sitting in Sheng's company every day. Therefore, she had already mastered a lot of skills. While other rich daughters were still using their parents' monthly pocket money for beauty and fun, she had already created more wealth for the group and her own worth with her own wisdom and hands. In Beijing, everyone knew that Sheng's group was managed by Sheng's daughter Sheng Yuyue, but no one had ever seen Sheng Yuyue's true face. Even on the day of getting the marriage certificate, Sheng Yuyue was careful and slightly adjusted her makeup. Therefore, after 3 months of employment, Song Qi, as the only person who had seen Sheng Yuyue, did not recognize that the secretary Sheng Xie was her boss's wife. All day long, Sheng Yuyue was busy. When Fu Yunting passed by her seat on his way to a meeting, she was immersed in a report. When he came back from the meeting, she still maintained the same posture. Fu Yunting suddenly felt that this secretary was different from many women he had seen. She had a very special temperament, sometimes charming, sometimes domineering, and sometimes even a little bit of a lady's temper. It looked like she really didn't look like an ordinary worker. Fu Yunting went back to the office and was busy until after 8 o'clock in the evening. He had planned to go back, but as soon as he walked out of the office, he saw Sheng Yuyue's computer was on, but she was not at her seat. He walked to the tea room. Sure enough, Sheng Yuyue was leaning against the wall with a cup of coffee in her hand. Her eyes were not focused, and she seemed to be thinking about something. Fu Yunting walked to her side and leaned over. "What are you doing?" His breath sprayed all over Sheng Yuyue's ears, scaring her so much that the coffee spilled on her body, and a brown-black flower suddenly bloomed on her chest. Fuck. Sheng Yuyue's temper suddenly rose up. Just when she was about to fire, she saw a man with a leisurely face leaning against the door looking at her. She immediately retracted her arrogance and showed a charming and aggrieved smile. Boss Fu, you scared me. Look, my clothes are dirty. While saying this, she hooked Fu Yunting's tie. Fu Yunting's eyes darkened. Is this woman a Sichuan opera student? She changes her face so quickly. She was ready to roll up her sleeves and scold him, but when she saw him, she immediately put away all her temper and edges. Chapter 8. Secretary Sheng seems to be very experienced. Fu Yunting let Sheng Yuyue pull his tie and bring herself to him. Well, since it's dirty, take it off. Fu Yunting lowered his head, and his white shirt was already stained with coffee stains. It was indeed very dirty. I thought Sheng Yuyue would definitely be shy, but I didn't expect her to be obedient. She took off her dirty shirt neatly and threw it directly into the trash can beside her. Mr. Fu, I have nothing to wear. She only had a black half-covered bra on her body, which was about to come out. Fu Yunting's Adam's apple rolled twice unconsciously. Sheng Yuyue caught this scene with her sharp eyes, and stood on tiptoe to hook her hands around Fu Yunting's neck. Fu Yunting did not answer her question, but lowered his eyes to look at the woman in front of him with a cunning look. Click. He suddenly moved his hand to her back and untied her at once. The beautiful scenery was all at once. Fu Yunting suddenly sighed in his heart that this woman was probably a goblin who brought disaster to the country and the people, otherwise, how could he lose control twice because of her? Sheng Yuyue did not feel shy at all because Fu Yunting untied her, but was more bold to lift up the shirt that Fu Yunting stuffed around his waist. The delicate and boneless little hand reached directly into the clothes and moved up slowly. Fu Yunting was no longer polite, and wrapped his big palm around the beauty with a little force. The woman's nose emitted a more seductive tone than hers. Not wanting to continue to endure, Sheng Yuyue was pushed to the tea table. Hiss. The flesh-colored stockings were torn open with irregular cracks. Fu Yunting grabbed one of her feet and put it on his waist, lowered his head, and kissed Sheng Yuyue's lips. Sheng Yuyue responded to Fu Yunting's kiss enthusiastically, and her fingertips were still restless. His face had begun to turn red, his breath became a little rapid, and a heat that could not be suppressed rolled in his body. He asked in a hoarse voice, Secretary Sheng seems to be very experienced. Has he repaired it? Sheng Yuyue was stunned for a moment before she realized what Fu Yunting was saying. The subordinates increased their strength in revenge, and Fu Yunting was a little angry at the sudden control. He lowered his head and nibbled at the scenery. Sheng Yuyue was not as stuffy as him. She closed her eyes, tilted her neck back slightly, and hummed comfortably. Another evenly matched game ended in a tie. Fu Yunting admired Sheng Yuyue's physical strength. Others might not be able to bear such a toss. But Sheng Yuyue not only endured it, but also fought back and forth with him. It was getting more and more interesting. It was already past midnight. The tea room was filled with a charming smell, and Fu Yunting threw his shirt on Sheng Yuyue. Put it on. After throwing these two words, he went straight back to his office. There were always several sets of clothes in his lounge all year round, and he just took one and changed into it. When he came out, Sheng Yuyue had already tidied herself and sat at her seat to work. You are dedicated. You can still come back to work after just doing a few hours of exercise. If this is not dedication, what is it? Then Mr. Fu, remember to give me a raise. Sheng Yuyue blinked her smart eyes and looked at Fu Yunting. Maybe because she had just finished exercising, the blush on her face had not completely faded. She looked completely different from the dignified look during the day, but rather a bit more seductive. Chapter 9. What the master asked me to wear. Fu Yunting ignored Sheng Yuyue's pretentious eyebrows and walked straight to the exclusive elevator. Sheng Yuyue looked at the man's straight back, pursed her lips in disdain, and continued to look at the data on the computer. She was busy until 2 o'clock in the morning, then she stood up and rubbed her shoulders, packed up all the materials needed for the meeting with Joseph Group, and then turned off the computer and prepared to go home. It was not until she walked to the parking lot that she realized that she was wearing Fu Yunting's shirt that was extremely inconsistent with her body shape. She casually tucked the extra corners of the shirt into her skirt and unbuttoned a button on her chest. Immediately, she had a new outfit, casual yet charming. The whole process was seen clearly by Fu Yunting, who was sitting in the car. Fu Yunting didn't know what had possessed him. He was ready to go home, but suddenly changed his mind when he reached the parking lot. The woman upstairs probably achieved her purpose of working overtime tonight. Now that I'm off work, let's see how long she's going to pretend. I didn't expect that I'd be sitting in the car waiting for 2 hours. It's crazy. Sheng Yuyue looked tired, but she still stood up straight. She had an absolute domineering and tenacity that ordinary girls didn't have. This temperament suddenly made Fu Yunting more curious about a secretary. With a hunter mentality, he wasn't in a hurry to dig out more information about Sheng Yuyue. There was a long way to go, and he would always find a way to expose his prey little by little. At this time, Fu Yunting didn't realize that this curiosity was what made him sink into Sheng Yuyue's love trap step by step. He thought he was a hunter, but it wasn't necessarily the case. As soon as Sheng Yuyue got home, she received a WeChat message from Fu Yunting, telling her that tomorrow's schedule was changed to tomorrow afternoon, so that she didn't need to go to the company tomorrow morning, and could go directly to the airport at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Sheng Yuyue raised her lips. This man is really not an ordinary stuffy man. He felt guilty, knowing that he had tormented her today, so he let her get up early tomorrow without catching a flight. The depressed mood caused by fatigue was swept away immediately, and she immediately regained her vitality and prepared to go to the kitchen to find something to eat to comfort her stomach. The housekeeper saw Sheng Yuyue going to the kitchen to find food and immediately followed her. "Madam, if you want to eat, I'll ask the servants to prepare it for you." Sheng Yuyue felt that the only good thing Fu Yunting did was to assign her such a housekeeper, which really made her worry less. "Okay, thank you, Uncle Tian." After saying that, Sheng Yuyue was about to leave the kitchen, but she saw Uncle Tian looking at her with an indescribable emotion in his eyes, and his face looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. "Uncle Tian, is there anything else?" She stopped and looked at Uncle Tian and asked. "Madam, your clothes." Uncle Tian didn't notice it at first, until he got close to Sheng Yuyue and found that she was wearing a men's shirt, which made it hard not to imagine. Sheng Yuyue looked at Uncle Tian's expression as if he had swallowed a fly, and laughed so hard that tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Uncle Tian looked at his wife's devilish laughter in confusion. "That's what your husband asked me to wear. I am very professional. During the marriage cooperation with your husband, I will not put a hat on him." After Sheng Yuyue finished speaking, she patted Uncle Tian's shoulder, left the kitchen directly, and went upstairs to her room to wash up. Chapter 10 Exposed. Uncle Tian stood at the door of the kitchen, seemingly still not reacting to Sheng Yuyue's words. "When did the master come home?" He shook his head. "It's better not to worry too much about the master's affairs." After washing up, Sheng Yuyue went downstairs, and a bowl of luxurious noodle soup was already on the table. She sat down, not caring about whether she was fat or not, and buried her head in eating. When Sheng Yuyue woke up, it was already past 10 in the morning. She hurriedly packed her luggage, checked the information she was going to bring, and then started to wash up. This was the first time she went on a business trip with the target person. Fu Yunting had always brought Song Qi with him, but this time he only brought her. No one would believe that he had no purpose. A stuffy and stinky man. Since the boss was so well-intentioned, Sheng Yuyue must have to take some trouble to make this trip worthwhile. She chose a blue suit for herself, which made her skin look even whiter and brighter. She put on a delicate makeup, then pulled up her suitcase, stepped on 7-centimeter high heels, and went out in a dashing manner. Song Qi sent Fu Yunting to the airport. As soon as he parked the car, he saw her pulling a suitcase and walking in front of their car. Song Qi was stunned for a moment. Sheng Yuyue usually wears a white and black professional suit at work. Although she is still wearing a suit today, she changed the color and immediately changed the style. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fu, Assistant Song." Sheng Yuyue greeted first. Fu Yunting, who had just got off the car, put his hands in his pockets and looked at the woman in front of him without any hesitation. Their makeup was a little different. This woman had dressed up specially. Sexy. His eye swept over the woman's suit jacket, a super V-neck suit jacket, and he didn't know what the woman was wearing inside, with a spring scene on her chest. His eyes became dim from the initial scrutiny, but seemed to be full of fire. I don't know whether it was anger or lust. It wasn't until Sheng Yuyue got on the plane that she realized there was a separate area in the airport where Fu Yunting's private planes were parked. Sheng Yuyue knew that almost every wealthy family would have their own private planes, but the fact that there were as many private planes as cars was really eye-opening for her. She seemed to have underestimated her husband's financial resources. It seemed that she didn't need to be too restrained in buying things in the future. Anyway, her husband had money, so it would be a waste if he didn't spend it. Fu Yunting sat opposite her, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, shaking it slowly. Looking at the woman opposite through the glass, the woman's face was changing with various emotions at this moment. She lost some of her sharpness and sassiness, and for the first time saw a kind of stupidity on her charming face. He felt that Sheng Yuyue seemed to have many faces. Although he could see that she sometimes deliberately showed her presence in the past 3 months, at that time, she looked ordinary, at best charming and amorous. It didn't interest him much. Secretary Sheng, you're exposed. Sheng Yuyue was still planning to use Fu Yunting's car to buy a small villa by the sea when she returned from this business trip, but his voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up at the man opposite. The man raised his chin and motioned her to lower her head. She lowered her head to look at her chest. Originally, the opening of her suit jacket was very low, and because of her sitting posture, the opening bulged a lot, revealing all her inner cruelty. But Sheng Yuyue didn't feel uncomfortable at all, which was why she chose this dress on purpose. Chapter 11. Does it look good? The sultry man took her on a business trip specifically to satisfy his bestiality. As his considerate wife, she naturally had to satisfy the man's bad taste. After all, she was very confident in her figure. She got up and walked to Fu Yunting and sat down. Her soft and boneless little hand slowly climbed up his thigh. Mr. Fu, does it look good? Fu Yunting did not answer her question, but his calloused hands had already reached into her collar. The beautiful scenery of a woman was protected only by a very thin lace cloth. The fingertips danced in the beautiful scenery intentionally or unintentionally. Sheng Yuyue was so sensitive and excited that she almost crushed the man's third leg. Fortunately, when her hand moved, Fu Yunting tightened his legs in time and avoided it. Secretary Sheng, be careful. If it breaks, you will have a hard time. Sheng Yuyue's ears flushed slightly when she heard his words. This man always speaks with lustful meaning in every sentence. It's rare to see you shy. Fu Yunting did not miss the blush behind her ears and seemed very satisfied with her reaction. He fought with her twice, and each time they were evenly matched and could not tell the winner, which made him almost doubt his own strength. Finally, this woman gave him some sense of accomplishment. It made him believe that he could do it again. The plane passed smoothly in the sky, but the breathing of the two people in the cabin was not steady. They fought for 10 hours in the 14-hour flight. The 2 previous times, due to the occasion and time, they just ended it hastily. This time, they both felt very satisfied. After the end, Sheng Yuyue washed up, wrapped a bath towel casually, and fell asleep without caring about her image. It turned out that she was not physically strong, but the stinky man who was stuffy had not exerted his strength before. This made people love and hate it. After Fu Yunting washed up, he saw a furry head under the quilt, and knew that this woman was finally exhausted by him. The corner of his mouth hooked imperceptibly, he lifted the quilt from the other side and lay down. The woman seemed to feel a source of heat, squeezed towards him, and a delicate arm circled his waist, and fell asleep again. Fu Yunting had never shared a bed with anyone before. He was suddenly so close to a woman that he didn't know how to react. He thought about it and thought, maybe he could hug her. The woman's alluring natural body fragrance made him unconsciously want to hug her and have a good sleep. Then he would hug her reluctantly. He put one arm through Sheng Yuyue's neck and gently held her in his arms. He closed his eyes and fell asleep soon. When Sheng Yuyue woke up, she found that she was already in the hotel room. It seemed that Fu Yunting carried her off the plane, and she didn't even know it all the way. How tired was she? Lift the quilt. Damn it. Didn't the stinky man help her put on her clothes? How did he carry her off the plane? Before Sheng Yuyue figured it out, she found large and small blue and red spots on her body. Fu Yunting was born in the year of the dog, definitely. She got up and was about to go to the bathroom to wash up, but she fell down as soon as she stepped on the ground. She stood up again by holding the edge of the bed, and slowly adapted to the strength of her legs, and then she walked slowly to the bathroom. While washing up, the stinging pain made her grit her teeth again. The stinky man really farmed without leaving any room. She was lucky not to die on the plane, right? Chapter 12. Throw it away after having fun. Sheng Yuyue washed up and just walked out of the room. She saw Fu Yunting sitting at the table working, with a cup of coffee at hand. Hearing their voice, he looked up at Sheng Yuyue. This Could the stinky man have just booked a room? She slept with her husband as a secretary and confirmed the matter of husband and wife. What kind of plot is this? Fu Yunting seemed to see through the woman's mind, and his eyes were stained with a little smile. Secretary Sheng's physical strength doesn't seem to be very good. The little man in Sheng Yuyue rolled his eyes fiercely, but her face still had her standard charming smile. Yes, President Fu is really in good physical condition. I'm in so much pain. While speaking, she rubbed her magnificent mountains and rivers with her hands, and her movements were extremely provocative. Fu Yunting's eyes dimmed again. Speak properly. This woman really seems to be bored if she doesn't flirt with people for a moment, and she doesn't even look at how ugly her walking posture is. Oh, President Fu. I'm hungry. Fu Yunting then remembered that it was just dawn when they got off the plane, and it was already evening now. He kindly ordered room service for her, and then continued to stare at the computer and got busy. You should adjust your state today. You have an appointment with Joseph at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. The gold-rimmed glasses framed between the nose wings, and the slender fingers kept tapping the keyboard, and the whole person exuded the breath of abstinence and fire. Their hotel delivered the meal quickly. Sheng Yuyue lost her appetite, probably because she was too hungry. After eating a few bites casually, she returned to the room. When she soaked herself in the bathtub, the warm water relieved the tight pain in her body, and she felt alive again. She indulged herself too much. After washing herself carefully from head to toe, Sheng Yuyue wiped her skin all over with body lotion. If you want a man to love you, you must first have soft and smooth skin. After taking good care of herself from head to toe, she changed into the nightgown she brought and lay on the bed to continue sleeping. Before falling asleep, she was still a little entangled. Did Fu Yunting really plan to sleep with her during the business trip? However, Fu Yunting explained to her fiercely that she really thought too much. Usually, he often came to L country on business trips with Song Chi. In order to facilitate work, they would choose this kind of two-bedroom suite. After a long time, Fu Yunting simply booked this suite for a long time. Sheng Yuyue had just entered the room, and Fu Yunting stopped his work. He leaned back in his chair, and the dark under his glasses was as black as ink. He took out a cigarette box from his pocket, slowly tore a hole, and the lighter made a crisp, click sound, and the fire immediately illuminated the emotions in his eyes. There were sparks between his fingers, and the smoke was lingering. He crossed his legs and leaned lazily on the office chair, as if he was thinking about something. Until the ash burned his hand, Fu Yunting put out the cigarette butt and got up and went back to the room. He only slept for a while on the plane, and took a nap when he arrived at the hotel. After that, he was busy all the time, and now he felt a little tired. Lying on the bed, Fu Yunting didn't fall asleep. There seemed to be a faint feeling of a woman's pillow on his arm, which made him a little distracted. He got up in annoyance, walked to Sheng Yuyue's room, and gently turned the handle. Good job. This woman was so good that she left immediately after having sex, and even locked the door. Who was she protecting herself from? Chapter 13 Unmoved. If his brothers saw Fu Yunting returning to his room after failing to climb the bed, they would probably think he was possessed by a sex maniac. The next day, when Fu Yunting walked out of the room, he saw Sheng Yuyue already dressed and about to sit down for breakfast. Today, she was wearing a complete white suit, loose white floor-length suit pants, and a pair of 7-centimeter high heels, which made her look even taller. She had a head of tea-black wavy long hair that was delicately coiled behind her head. She wore a pair of Chanel earrings on her ears, a necklace from the same series on her fair neck, a Patek Philippe watch on her left wrist, and a new Van Cleef Arpels ring on her right index finger. The temperament she exuded was that of a shrewd and capable female boss, not an ordinary secretary. Good morning, President Fu. I ordered a breakfast for you, too. It seemed that Sheng Yuyue had a good rest last night, and she looked energetic and radiant. She smiled generously and greeted Fu Yunting, without any of the trepidation that other secretaries and assistants had towards him. Fu Yunting nodded, walked to the dining table and sat down. The two of them finished their breakfast in silence and set off for Joseph Group. Joseph, the president of Joseph Group, was a native of Country L. When they arrived, Joseph was already waiting in the conference room. The assistant led them into the conference room. Hey, hello, Fu. This is my secretary, Katie. Hello, Joseph. My secretary, Shengxia. The four of them shook hands politely, and Katie looked at Sheng Yuyue with a puzzled look. Shengxia? Sheng Yuyue secretly winked at Katie while Fu Yunting was talking to Joseph. After all, they were all smart people, and even if they had questions, they would not say too much in such occasions. In fact, Sheng Yuyue had been living in Country L before. Although she and Katie were not best friends, they were good friends. In the past, they would meet up to drink, go shopping, and talk about work. Katie knew Sheng Yuyue's identity very well. She didn't know why the president of Sheng's company didn't act properly and went to be Fu Yunting's secretary. However, Sheng Yuyue always had her own ideas. Since she did this, Katie would definitely not expose her. She could only ask later. In fact, Sheng Yuyue didn't expect to meet an acquaintance here. I always knew that Katie worked in a large company. Sometimes she would come to ask me about some work problems, and Sheng Yuyue would give me some suggestions. But she never asked her what company she worked for, and Katie didn't say. Sheng Yuyue was also quite surprised when she saw Katie when she first entered the meeting room. However, as a woman who had long practiced the skill of keeping calm, she still stood behind Fu Yunting and played the role of an ordinary secretary. Since Joseph saw Sheng Yuyue, his eyes have hardly left her. The beauty of Oriental women really fascinated her. Besides, Sheng Yuyue has such a charming face, with charming eyes and eyebrows. Sheng Yuyue had actually noticed Joseph's malicious eyes a long time ago, and had beaten him tens of thousands of times in her heart, but she still kept a polite and friendly smile on her face. Fu Yunting had to admit that Sheng Yuyue's work ability was indeed very strong. He didn't expect that she would prepare all the information so thoroughly with only one day given to her that day. Chapter 14: Unusual Relationship. Throughout the entire meeting, she not only made all the records, but even when they mentioned some data, she could accurately say the numbers without looking up the information. There are not many people who can be recognized by Fu Yunting, but today, Sheng Yuyue once again broke Fu Yunting's example. Katie seemed a little mediocre at this time. She was only responsible for helping to hand over the information and record some important matters. The meeting lasted for 4 hours, and finally the specific details of the cooperation were finalized. Sheng Yuyue felt that she was about to have hypoglycemia, and she was so grateful that she almost left Fu Yunting and ran out to find food. Fu Yunting stood up first, and Sheng Yuyue immediately stood up and prepared to leave. Joseph hurriedly walked to the elevator to meet them. "Fu, let's have dinner together tonight, and bring your beautiful secretary." Fu Yunting put his hands in his pockets, and there seemed to be a slight smile on his face, but there was a clearness in his eyes. Joseph was a little flustered by his eyes, but the invisible temptation from Sheng Yuyue made him unable to extricate himself. These absurd things about men and women in love are completely common in their country L. Otherwise, how could such an ordinary Katie stay with him to work for so long? But compared with today, Katie immediately became boring. A woman like Sheng Yuyue who looks charming and has outstanding working ability. It's just that all men want to press her down and love her, right? The elevator door opened, and Fu Yunting walked straight into the elevator. Just when everyone thought that Fu Yunting would not accept the invitation to the dinner, he slowly spoke. "Fu will definitely be there on time." Joseph smiled and waved to them after hearing this. The elevator door closed, and Fu Yunting glanced at the woman standing beside him. This woman is really open-minded. Joseph clearly had bad intentions for this dinner tonight. With Sheng Yuyue's intelligence and insight, she should know very well what she might face tonight. But she not only looked indifferent, but even leisurely looked at herself in the mirror in the elevator. Fu Yunting found that Sheng Yuyue had really refreshed his understanding of her again and again in the past few days. It seemed that every time they got along, she looked different. I don't know how many unknown faces are waiting for him to discover. In the evening, Fu Yunting and Sheng Yuyue appeared on time at the restaurant reserved by Joseph. This time Katie did not follow, and only Joseph was waiting in the restaurant. Sheng Yuyue sat next to Fu Yunting, and Joseph sat opposite Fu Yunting. He stared at Sheng Yuyue without hesitation, as if a hungry wolf stared at a piece of fat meat. Sheng Yuyue was not afraid either, and still raised her red wine glass with a smile and clinked glasses with Joseph. Happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. After taking a sip of red wine, the three began to eat. "Fu, why don't you see Assistant Song this time?" Joseph's eyes turned back and forth between the two. With his experience, he immediately felt the unusualness between Fu Yunting and Sheng Yuyue. He had seen Song Qi's attitude towards Fu Yunting, and he could see that he was familiar but still had a respectful attitude. But Sheng Yuyue, as a secretary, had no or for her boss at all, and Fu Yunting didn't seem to think there was anything wrong. This was the biggest problem. Joseph looked at the two people who cut the steak almost in sync, his eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a hint of unknown meaning in his eyes. Interesting. Chapter 15 Secretary Sheng, have a cup of coffee with me. After 3 rounds of drinking, Joseph drank a little too much and seemed a little drunk. The driver drove the car to the door of the restaurant. Xinxia, you take Joseph back. Sheng Yuyue stared at Fu Yunting with disbelief. She didn't believe that Fu Yunting didn't see Joseph Sima Zhao's heart, but he still chose to push her out. What's the difference between this and sending her to Joseph's bed? What does Fu Yunting think of her? Or did he get all those contracts in this way? Joseph didn't care about the sparks between Fu Yunting and Sheng Yuyue. He only heard Fu Yunting asking this charming and beautiful secretary to take him back. He took Sheng Yuyue's hand with lustful eyes, and the two got in the car together. Fu Yunting watched the car leave, and his face couldn't tell what emotion it was. Turning around, he also got in the car. Sheng Yuyue sat next to Joseph, and she was so angry that she wanted to pull out Fu Yunting's muscles and skin him. Although she was not afraid of what Joseph would do to her, she was sure that even if he dared, he would not succeed. It was just that she could not swallow this breath. When had the eldest daughter of the Sheng family ever suffered such humiliation? That was not right, as if all her humiliation was given by Fu Yunting. This little thief. Joseph kept staring at Sheng Yuyue's profile. The woman's skin was as white as cream, her lips were rosy, and her white swan neck made the lines and contours of her face more clear. He reached out to Sheng Yuyue's back, trying to pull her to his side, but she avoided him. Joseph, it looks like you're home. The car stopped in front of a villa, and Sheng Yuyue opened the door and got out of the car. Joseph failed to succeed in the car, so he had no choice but to get out of the car. Secretary Sheng, come in and have a cup of coffee with me. He still didn't give up. It's too late. I'll treat Joseph next time I have a chance. Sheng Yuyue had to socialize frequently for a while before, and she was very good at dealing with these old perverts. But Joseph knew that this opportunity tonight was rare. Fu Yunting took the initiative to send this beauty to his mouth. How could he not eat it? He had seen many of these young secretaries' tactics of playing hard to get. At this moment, he naturally felt that Sheng Yuyue was playing hard to get with him. As long as I don't think it's too late. As Joseph said, he was about to go forward to pull Sheng Yuyue. Sheng Yuyue suddenly dodged, and several bodyguards appeared from the dark and surrounded her. Joseph looked at the scene in front of him and was a little confused. A young secretary needs so many bodyguards. Are these bodyguards Fu Yunting's men? Joseph, please respect yourself, so as not to end up getting into trouble. Sheng Yuyue changed her previous attitude, and her face was cold at this moment, just like when Fu Yunting was silent. Joseph was a bully, and he felt guilty when he saw this scene. The most important thing was that he couldn't figure out whether these bodyguards were sent by Fu Yunting or Sheng Yuyue. He could only smile and turned back to his room. You can be more high profile. Sheng Yuyue was speechless about the bodyguards that her grandfather arranged to protect her in secret. In fact, she was a black belt in Taekwondo, and dealing with a small shrimp like Joseph who was attracted by beauty was as simple as slapping an ant to death. Unfortunately, these bodyguards, with their mentally retarded and incompetent flashing methods, were really rustic, and they thought they were very handsome. Chapter 16 Find Her. Sheng Yuyue did not return to their hotel, but went to her home in Country L. Let him experience the feeling of being tormented, and let him understand that she, Sheng Yuyue, was not someone he could insult. As a result, Fu Yunting enjoyed her happily, and did not feel any difference in his attitude towards her. Even tonight, he actually asked a woman like him to send a man who had bad intentions towards him home. This is simply no bottom line. Fu Yunting went back to their hotel for a meeting. After the meeting, he looked at the time on the computer and saw that 2 hours had passed. But Sheng Yuyue had not returned yet. He picked up the phone on the table and dialed Sheng Yuyue's number. However, the call was connected, but no one answered. He called several times in a row, but still no one answered. He threw the phone on the table in annoyance, his dark eyes narrowed slightly under the lenses, one hand rested on the table, and his fingers gently tapped the desktop. After thinking for a while, he stood up and left the room. He dialed Song Chi's number while walking. Check Joseph's address, immediately. Song Chi sent the address to Fu Yunting in less than 20 minutes. He had originally asked the driver to walk around the hotel first, but after receiving Song Chi's message, he immediately asked the driver to change direction. When he arrived in front of Joseph's villa, he could already see that it was dark inside. He rang the doorbell of the villa. Joseph had just fallen asleep when he was awakened by a series of deadly doorbell calls. Putting on a bathrobe, he opened the door while cursing. Seeing Fu Yunting, he was stunned. "Where is Secretary Sheng?" Joseph was even more confused now. That woman had been gone for more than 2 hours, and now she was looking for her? Besides, what was the point of looking for him? "Mr. Fu, it's not appropriate for you to come to my place to look for your secretary, right? I asked her to take you back, but she disappeared. Shouldn't I look for you?" Joseph was already angry because he failed to win over Sheng Yuyue and was threatened. Fu Yunting came here to make things difficult for him. "Mr. Fu, your secretary is a hottie. You might as well worry about me instead of her." "So, what did you do to her?" Fu Yunting heard some information from Joseph's words. He took 2 steps towards Joseph, his eyes narrowed slightly, and his pupils under the lenses were as sharp as knives. Chapter 17: A Ruthless Man. Joseph was really going crazy because of this couple. One of them looked harmless, the other looked cold, but their auras were so similar. At this moment, Fu Yunting's aura was just like a cheater, absolutely fierce and brutal like a strong man. How could I do anything to her? What's more, President Fu, you asked her to send me there. Even if something really happened, wouldn't it be a bit redundant for you to make such a scene now? Although he was still a little afraid of Fu Yunting in his heart, Joseph still straightened his back as if he was dying for face. Fu Yunting laughed instead of getting angry. "I just saw that you were a little drunk, so I asked the secretary to send you back. What else do you want to happen, ho?" The low and cold voice made Joseph step back. Fu Yunting stared at Joseph's face. After a while, he took 2 steps back and turned to get in the car. There were marks of sleep on Joseph's face. It seemed that Sheng Yuyue was indeed not detained here by him. Watching Fu Yunting's car leave, Joseph breathed a sigh of relief. Even though he had seen many people with fierce means, no one was like Fu Yunting, whose aura could really scare people to death. Fu Yunting called Sheng Yuyue again, but no one answered. He thought for a while and asked the driver to go back to their hotel directly. Since Sheng Yuyue was not with Joseph, he guessed that the woman was just in a bad mood and deliberately didn't come back. In this case, there was no need for him to waste time looking for her. It seems that he is getting easier to talk to. A secretary dares to put on airs for him. Think that you can be the king by climbing into his bed. On the other side, Sheng Yuyue took a shower after venting, and immediately went to the study to work again. She has been in L country for a few days, and she has no time to deal with Sheng's work properly. Tonight just happened to give her a chance to do her own business quietly. Of course, she saw Fu Yunting's call. She just didn't answer it on purpose. She was afraid that if she answered the call, she would not be able to help but greet his ancestors. When she finished her work, it was already light in the sky. She stretched her body, closed her laptop, stood up slowly, and went back to the room. As soon as her head touched the pillow, she fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up, it was already past 3 in the afternoon. She glanced at her phone, and Fu Yunting did not call her again. How ruthless. She got up and went to the bathroom to wash up. After coming out, she changed into the same clothes as yesterday, deliberately put on a makeup that could be said to be not delicate at all, and did not comb her hair, which looked messy. She practiced a few pitiful and slightly hurt expressions in front of the mirror. Nodded, and admired her perfect acting skills. She took her bag and went out, and took a car back to their hotel. When she returned to their hotel, she found that Fu Yunting's things were gone. She was finally willing to call Fu Yunting. "Mr. Fu, where are you? Why are all the things in the hotel gone?" Although the person was not in front of her, she was still dedicated to making all kinds of innocent and pitiful expressions, and her tone was full of grievances. "I'm at the airport, ready to board the plane." Hearing Fu Yunting's answer, Sheng Yuyue was so angry that she put her hands on her hips and kept taking deep breaths. "Mr. Fu, won't you wait for me to go together?" Sheng Yuyue's somewhat panicked voice came into Fu Yunting's ears through the phone. He pursed his lips and stared at the plane in front of him with a mysterious look. "I'll give you 40 minutes. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Chapter 18: Fu Yunting Insomnia. Sheng Yuyue really felt that Fu Yunting was really a scumbag at this moment. Not only did he throw her to Joseph, who had ill intentions, but now he was planning to abandon her and return home. She stood there and took a few deep breaths before her anger gradually calmed down. She packed her luggage and rushed to the airport. When she arrived at the airport, Fu Yunting was just about to board the plane. He stood at the cabin door and watched her pull the suitcase, looking calm and composed, and walked to him slowly. "Mr. Fu, I'm on time." She shook the screen of her mobile phone and asked Fu Yunting to check the time. It was exactly 40 minutes. Fu Yunting was too lazy to respond to him and turned around to get on the plane. Sheng Yuyue followed closely behind. The plane took off quickly. Fu Yunting went to the lounge inside the plane to catch up on sleep after takeoff. Although he probably guessed that Sheng Yuyue was just angry and deliberately didn't answer his phone calls and didn't go back to the hotel, she was still a woman after all, and she looked so ostentatious, and in a strange country, it was inevitable that he was still a little worried. He still regretted asking her to send Joseph off. It was just that these were Song Chi's jobs before, and he habitually said that Sheng Yuyue should send Joseph off. Even though he quickly realized that this order was ill-considered, he still didn't go back on his word. "I don't want to be embarrassed." Fu Yunting spent the whole night in regret and worry. The result is that he can't sleep. "I felt a little groggy when I woke up in the morning. I waited until the morning but Sheng Yuyue didn't come back." In a rage, he decided to leave for China. At this moment, seeing that the woman appeared safely and followed him on the plane, he began to feel sleepy. Sheng Yuyue sat alone in the seat with a full head of lines. "I dressed up like this, is Fu Yunting blind? Or did he see it but pretended not to see it? Or, he didn't care if she had any accidents again? I suddenly felt bored." She took out the makeup bag from her bag and got up to go to the bathroom. She removed all the makeup on her face, applied some skin care products, took off her contact lenses, put on a pair of ordinary myopic glasses, and then changed into a set of loose clothes again. After returning to her seat, she took out an eye mask from her bag, adjusted the seat to a suitable height, and lay down comfortably. Sheng Yuyue is best at not thinking about problems that she can't figure out. She should be comfortable first. At this moment, what she wants most is to spend the long 14-hour flight in sleep. When Fu Yunting woke up, it was already past 1 in the morning. He didn't expect that he could sleep so long. The woman didn't even come into the lounge. He got up and walked outside, and what he saw was Sheng Yuyue's plain face. She lay flat on the seat and fell asleep on her side. She was wearing a t-shirt and a pair of super short sweatpants. Even if she was asleep, she looked very lively and beautiful. It was just that the slender legs were unwilling to lie under the blanket, but instead, they were sandwiched between the blanket, and they looked very sweet in sleep. The position of his Adam's apple rolled twice imperceptibly. He didn't wake her up, but went to the bathroom to wash his face and returned to his seat. He sat opposite Sheng Yuyue, staring at the sleeping woman for a long time, as if thinking about something. The stewardess came over at this time and wanted to ask him if he needed something to eat, but was persuaded by his eyes. When Sheng Yuyue woke up, it was already dawn. She opened the baffle and saw the blue sky outside, and instantly felt that she was fully charged again. She stretched her body and turned around to find that Fu Yunting was sitting diagonally opposite her, staring at her leisurely. No, strictly speaking, he was staring at her chest. This man couldn't be thinking about doing morning exercises on the plane. She just changed into an ordinary dress, and the style was also very conventional. Didn't she seduce him? She looked down at her clothes following the man's gaze. Suddenly, she hugged her chest with both hands and looked at Fu Yunting with a panicked face. When she changed her clothes before going to bed, she habitually took off her bra. At this moment, because she stretched, 2 marks appeared on her clothes. Her head was relatively large and protruding, and when she didn't wear a bra, the marks really stole the show. Fu Yunting looked at her slightly exaggerated expression and curled his lips. "You're acting a little too much." There was a hint of teasing in his tone. "It's not like I haven't seen it before, I've pinched it before." Sheng Yuyue didn't expect that this man would not only do it, but also say it in a sexy way. Chapter 19. It's my turn. Sheng Yuyue was indeed frightened by her unintentional exposure at first. But she has never been a shy person. She was used to acting in front of Fu Yunting, so she instinctively started acting again. Fu Yunting seemed to understand her acting style more and more. Sometimes when he was in a good mood, he was willing to cooperate with her in acting. But, now? Since Secretary Sheng had opened the door, there was no reason for him not to go in. He extended his right index finger and hooked it at Sheng Yuyue. Sheng Yuyue took off the blanket covering her thighs, stood up and sat next to Fu Yunting. As soon as she sat down, the man leaned towards her. She made a sound from her nose unconsciously. The man seemed to love hearing her out of control and somewhat forbearing voice. Sheng Yuyue was afraid of alarming the flight attendant, so she bit her lower lip tightly to prevent herself from making those blushing sounds. However, Sheng Yuyue herself didn't know that her lip-biting action at this time made Fu Yunting want to pamper her more. Finally, Sheng Yuyue finally raised her hands to surrender to him. "Secretary Sheng, it's my turn." After saying that, he pinched the woman's neck. Sheng Yuyue swore that this was the craziest thing she had ever done in her life. She has always been bold, and she has never been afraid to try many exciting and new things. It's just, who will teach her? The man seemed to see her helplessness, and he raised his lips rhythmically. 40 minutes later. Sheng Yuyue raised her head and looked at Fu Yunting with wide eyes. Fu Yunting handed her a bottle of water. Sheng Yuyue drank half a bottle at once, still frowning, with an unhappy look on her face. She didn't know how to describe it. Fu Yunting looked at the woman in front of him who was almost angry, and chuckled. Finally, for once, he realized that she was not acting. "Okay, go wash up. I'll ask the stewardess to bring some food." Sheng Yuyue got up angrily and went into the bathroom. Fu Yunting then retracted the smile on his face, called the stewardess, and asked her to bring breakfast. When the stewardess walked to Fu Yunting, there was a faint smell in the air. A glance at the door of the bathroom, the stewardess's ears quickly turned pink. When Sheng Yuyue returned to her seat, the breakfast had been neatly arranged. She ate it in a hurry. She had forgotten that she hadn't eaten for several hours. A seemingly light morning exercise actually consumed a lot of her energy. Now she realized that she was so hungry that she could probably eat 3 hamburgers. Fu Yunting still sat upright in his seat, eating the food in front of him elegantly. He seemed to be calm and composed no matter what happened. Sometimes it really made people angry. Sheng Yuyue was the first to bear the brunt. She took a bite of the bread and chewed it hard, as if she was treating it as Fu Yunting. It seemed that she wanted to cover up the taste in her mouth that could not be washed away. After breakfast, Fu Yunting took out his notebook and started working. Sheng Yuyue also reorganized some details of the meeting with Joseph Group. When all their work was done, it was almost time. Sheng Yuyue went to the bathroom again to put on makeup and change clothes. Fu Yunting frowned slightly as he looked at the woman with delicate makeup in front of him. Although the difference between her bare face and her makeup was not like those of internet celebrities, she looked like a different person. But after makeup, she was charming and seductive with a hint of coldness and a sense of strength. But without makeup, she was even more attractive, and only gave people a feeling. That was charm. Obviously, Fu Yunting liked her without makeup more. After they got off the plane, Fu Yunting wanted to send her back out of humanitarianism, but she refused. "Thank you, Mr. Fu, but I won't waste your time. I'll go back by myself." After saying that, she pulled her suitcase and walked away with a proud step. What a joke, she was still living in their wedding room, and if he sent her, wouldn't it be exposed? Fu Yunting had never seen such an ungrateful woman. If you say she was deliberately seducing, she would turn around and walk away every time. Even if she wasn't seducing him, she always looked seductive in front of him. He withdrew his gaze from Sheng Yuyue, turned around and got into the car. Chapter 20 Natural Skin Care Lotion. When Sheng Yuyue returned home, she received a call from her grandfather. "Little girl, is it fun to go abroad with your husband?" My grandfather's sly voice came from the phone. It seemed that those stupid bodyguards went to report their work as soon as they landed. She suddenly felt fortunate that she and Fu Yunting lived in the same suite in Country L, otherwise they would have been exposed. "Grandpa, please at least inform me when you arrange someone next time, otherwise I will be scared to death by those idiots." Sheng Yuyue probably only used her coquettishness towards Sheng Zhuohan throughout her life. Sheng Zhuohan laughed as he listened to his granddaughter's spoiled complaint. "Besides, I'm a Taekwondo black belt, why would I need those things?" Sheng Yuyue felt better as she listened to her grandfather's hearty laughter. Grandpa had always arranged for someone to protect her in secret. Unless there was a special situation, those people seemed to be non-existent. Over time, Sheng Yuyue also forgot about it. Today, she decided to have a good talk with her grandfather and ask him to remove these people. Otherwise, sooner or later, it would be exposed. Didn't I forget this too? These bodyguards had been assigned to guard Sheng Yuyue since she was abroad, and Sheng Zhuohan had indeed forgotten about them. Now that you have your little husband's protection, you really don't need them anymore. Sheng Zhuohan felt that with Fu Yunting's status and power, he would be able to protect her precious granddaughter well. Yes, that's good. Just for you to know. Sheng Yuyue didn't expect that her grandfather had already figured it out before she even started exerting her strength. Everyone is happy. After talking to her grandfather on the phone, Sheng Yuyue drove directly to Sheng's group without taking any rest. She just returned to China today, and Fu Yunting kindly gave her a day off so that she could go back to the company to deal with other matters. As soon as she entered the president's office, her friend and best friend Shen Yuan immediately flashed in front of her after hearing the news. Hey, little Yeye, your skin has improved a lot. Did you use pure natural skin care lotion? Shen Yuan stood in front of Sheng Yuyue and stared at her face. Sheng Yuyue put her hand on his face and pushed him away. Envy? You also have it. You can produce and sell it at any time. TSK, look. It's different after being cleared. Even the words are colored. Sheng Yuyue. Didn't you say it first? Okay, hurry up. First, tell me what's going on at Shengshi Company. Shen Yuan is not only Sheng Yuyue's best friend, but also the vice president of Sheng Group, helping Sheng Yuyue manage the company's affairs. It was obvious that Sheng Yuyue was not in much mood to joke with him now. He pulled out a chair and sat down, and then the two of them started talking about work. Shengwu Temple negotiated a deal with Jude Law, and he took the lion's share. As a result, Jude Law's side was not only a shell company, but also took away all the project funds and ran away overnight. The person has not been found yet. After listening to Shen Yuan's words, Sheng Yuyue frowned. Sheng Guosi is Sheng Yuyue's father. In fact, when she was a child, her father was very powerful in her impression. Originally, the position of president of the Sheng Group belonged to him, but he insisted on bringing her half-sister back to the Sheng family, so his grandfather dismissed him from his position and kicked him out of the Sheng family. After Sheng Guosi left the Sheng family, he established a company called Shengshi. Chapter 21 Deserve to be cheated. Ever since Sheng Yuyue found out, she has been asking Shen Yuan to pay attention to Shengshi's movements. Shen Yuan looked at Sheng Yuyue's frown and continued. What's even more interesting is, do you know who introduced Jude Law to Shengwu Temple? Sheng Yuyue didn't say anything, and her eyes signaled him to continue. It's your sister Sheng Huanyu. This time, Sheng Yuyue finally changed her expression and raised her eyebrows. Sheng Guosi doesn't seem to be such a visionary person. How could he be deceived so easily? Sheng Yuyue didn't quite believe it. Sheng Guosi was someone who had been in the mall for a long time. Logically speaking, such a mistake shouldn't happen. Sheng Huanyu is dating Jude Law. Jude Law usually behaves like a super rich man. He sends her limited edition brand names every now and then, coaxing her to die. Your father saw that Jude Law was generous enough in his actions, and Sheng Huanyu always said good things for him in front of your father, so your father was gullible. In fact, even if Shen Yuan didn't say these things, Sheng Yuyue would have probably guessed it, but she still couldn't accept it. In her heart, she still remembered the brief scene of fatherly kindness and filial piety with her father when she was a child. But the more she knew about him and Sheng Huanyu, the more her remaining thoughts were shattered and smoothed away. All the favor of Shengwu Temple was given to Sheng Huanyu. To him, she seemed like an outsider, indifferent. Because of Sheng Huanyu's relationship with Jude Law, Sheng Guosi cooperated with him without even needing to investigate, but was tricked by his own daughter. He is almost at the end of his rope and the bank has rejected his loan application. Be prepared, he may come back to you and your grandson at any time. Shen Yuan watched Sheng Yuyue lost in thought and then said. If he still has the nerve, he won't come back to us. As soon as Shen Yuan finished speaking, Sheng Zhuohan opened the door to the president's office and walked in with a cane. Sheng Yuyue's expression changed and she immediately stood up, went to Sheng Zhuohan and helped him to sit on the sofa. Grandpa, why didn't you say anything when you came here? I just scared your precious granddaughter. Sheng Yuyue knew that her grandfather was worried about the existence of her father and Sheng Huanyu, and she was afraid that he would be sad because of what happened at Shengwu Temple. She winked at Shen Yuan, hoping that Shen Yuan would help smooth things over for a while. HMPH, how could I hear such wonderful things if I didn't come here? Xiaonazi, let me tell you. I won't allow you to be soft-hearted and help that thing. Sheng Zhuohan was extremely disappointed with Xinghua Temple. He was very shrewd when he managed the Sheng family in the past, but he didn't know if he was bewitched or something. Since he recognized Xing Huanyu, his heart has turned aside. Instead, he ignored his daughter and father, whom he had been with day and night for so many years. You deserve to be cheated. Grandfather. In fact, Sheng Yuyue had not yet decided whether to help or not. The two little people in her heart were still tearing each other apart when they were cut off by her grandfather. I want to see if that woman is still willing to follow him even though he has lost his money and status, and if his so-called daughter is still willing to call him dad. These are all retributions in this life. Sheng Zhuohan was determined not to take action. There are only parents in the world who are not good, and he must have felt somewhat uncomfortable in his heart. However, his teaching methods have always been harsh, otherwise, there wouldn't he be such a domineering and imposing Sheng Yuyue. Chapter 22 Returning to my mother's home. Xiaoyeye, just listen to Grandpa. It won't go wrong. Grandpa, please talk to us. I'm going back to work. Xing Yuan spoke in time to break the heavy atmosphere in the office. Sheng Zhuohan also knew his intentions and nodded. Xing Yuan, this little girl is acting like a fool every day. Please pay more attention to her. Sheng Zhuohan knew about his relationship with Xing Yuyue, and his tone of voice became different when talking to him. Like an amiable old man. Xing Yuan smiled and said that he would definitely do it, and then went out. Come, let me take a look. Yes, your face is rosy. Grandpa was a little worried that you two would get married without any emotional basis. It seems that your married life is quite nourishing. Sheng Zhuohan is someone who has come before. Whether a woman has been nourished by a man or not, the contrast between before and after is very obvious. He can tell it right away. What's more, recently, she has been more than just moisturized, she has been watered, the water content has exceeded the standard, okay. Oh, Grandpa, what are you talking about? That's disrespectful to the elderly. Sheng Yuyue fell into her grandfather's arms and spoke shyly. Seeing this, Sheng Zhuohan laughed out loud and touched Sheng Yuyue's head, still feeling a little distressed inside. This child lost his father's favor almost since he was 10 years old and has been dependent on him. She has always worked hard and never let him down. He is old now, and he doesn't know how many more years he can accompany her. He just hopes that there will be someone by her side who understands her and feels at ease when he leaves. It's been a few months since you got married. Isn't it time to bring him to meet me? As soon as Sheng Zhuohan finished speaking, Xing Yuyue almost couldn't control the expression on her face. Grandpa, Yunting is very busy. Let me find time to take him back. It seemed that besides being busy, she didn't know what other reason she could find. Their relationship as a couple is abnormal in every aspect. A normal couple has been married for several months without seeing each other, not even each other's parents. Only Grandpa, who didn't know whether he was really confused or fake, happily thought he had found a good man for her who knew both cold and hot. He's just a deadbeat thief. Xing Yuyue let her grandpa play by himself for a while, then she quickly finished some work at hand, explained some things to Xing Yuan, and then took Sheng Zhuohan back. She hadn't been home for a long time, and as soon as she entered the house, she felt like tears filled her eyes. When the steward Uncle Qin saw Xing Yuyue, he immediately came to greet her. The young lady has gone home. The master must be happy tonight. Although Qin Bo is the butler, he has been in the Xing family since Xing Zhuohan was young. He has watched Xing Yuyue grow up, and Xing Yuyue also respects Qin Bo very much. Uncle Qin, I want to eat braised prawns tonight. Okay, I'll make you your favorite food tonight. When Qin Bo saw Xing Yuyue coming home, he was so happy that he ran out to the kitchen to give instructions. Xing Yuyue looked at the two old men and shook her head helplessly. It feels so good to be home. She threw herself on the big sofa, picked up the fruit on the table and started eating. Sit down and look presentable, okay. Sheng Zhuohan couldn't bear to see Xing Yuyue, with her stunning face, doing things that were totally inconsistent with her appearance. Xing Yuyue used to be able to restrain herself in front of her grandfather, but after moving to Fu Yunting's villa, the freedom without any constraints made her forget that all of a sudden. Chapter 23, Phased Victory. When Xing Yuyue went to work, she felt that the other secretaries in the secretarial office looked at her with inquiring eyes. What's wrong? Is there something on my face? Xing Yuyue put down her bag, looked at everyone and asked. The other secretaries immediately lowered their heads and pretended to be busy with other things. Only Lisa rushed to her side and bumped her shoulder. Tell me the truth, how is Mr. Fu's kung fu? In response to Lisa's direct approach, Sheng Yuyue chose a roundabout tactic. Want to know, why don't you try it yourself? Don't interrupt. We all saw the shirt and several balls of tissues you threw in the tea room before your business trip. Lisa usually has a good relationship with Sheng Yuyue, so she doesn't hide anything when she speaks to him. Sheng Yuyue. Why do these people care so much about trash cans? Then you must have seen the coffee stains on my clothes, right? Isn't it normal to throw them away? TSK, 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 go ahead and make excuses. Guess what I saw? Lisa continued. Unfortunately, Mr. Fu's cufflinks fell next to the tissue. Sheng Yuyue didn't expect that there was such a thing. It was probably accidentally rubbed off when he helped her wipe it clean that night. Then you should go ask your boss Fu what he did with my dirty clothes. After Sheng Yuyue said these words, she sat down and started working. If the conversation continued, she was afraid that Lisa would bring up more things. The other secretaries seemed to be working, but in fact, their ears were almost flying to them. Lisa shrugged at the others, turned around and returned to her seat. Fu Yunting didn't even go to work today, but Sheng Yuyue felt at ease. Since her boss was not in the company, she could take advantage of the opportunity. She reviewed several documents sent to her by Shen Yuan, signed them online, and reissued them to Shen Yuan. When she finished this, it was almost time to get off work. She thought for a moment and called another female best friend, Meng Qin. Mosers. Are you willing to call me? As soon as the call was connected, Meng Qin's voice reached his ears. I asked you to have dinner, are you leaving? Mr. Shin's treat, there's no reason not to do it. I called Shen Yuan and asked him to treat me to a drink. Meng Qin advocates freedom and doing whatever she wants, so she doesn't want to work seriously in an office. She chooses to help people with cosmetic repairs. This is a relatively new profession, but the income is not bad. Sheng Yuyue got off work when she arrived, and she drove to Meng Qin's studio. As soon as Meng Qin got into the car, he fell on Sheng Yuyue and looked at his best friend's face. TSK, 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 it's different when you have a man. This skin. Sheng Yuyue rolled her eyes at her, and with a push of her foot, the car sped out like it was flying. When they arrived at Mayatang, Shen Yuan also happened to arrive. The nature of Mayatang is somewhat like a club, where you can eat hot pot, cook private meals, and drink and sing. Sheng Yuyue chose this place to make it convenient for Meng Qin to run wild. Miss Shen, tell me, what is the progress of controlling your husband? This is the issue that Meng Qin is most concerned about. When she first knew that she was marrying Fu Yunting, the most powerful man in Beijing, she was extremely excited. As a result, Sheng Yuyue said that the two of them were the most unfamiliar strangers. Turning around, Sheng Yuyue ran to Huanyu International to work as Fu Yunting's secretary, vowing to take down Fu Yunting and then discard him mercilessly. Today, when she saw Miss Sheng's appearance, it seemed that the revolution had achieved a phased victory. Chapter 24, Progress of Controlling Husband. Sheng Yuyue tilted her head and rolled her eyes, as if she was thinking about Meng Qin's question. Meng Qin blinked and waited for her answer. The result, wow. Sheng Yuyue suddenly sat up straight, reached out for the teapot on the table, and poured herself a glass of water. Order some food. I'm starving. It was as if Meng Qin had been holding it in for a long time and finally let out a fart. He curled his 5 fingers into a fist and knocked it on Sheng Yuyue's head. What the hell? Asking you about your husband controlling progress. There's nothing much to say. I don't understand what that scumbag is thinking. Sheng Yuyue didn't lie, she really couldn't figure out Fu Yunting's psychology. To say that he was not hooked, he was actually very hard on her every time, as if he was obsessed with her. But after each session, he would return to his ascetic and cold appearance. This is not called a scumbag, I feel sorry for him. Probably, it was this body that attracted him, but when it came to making his heart seduce him, Sheng Yuyue felt that she still had a long way to go. Thinking of this, she felt a little sour in her heart. Before he had time to think clearly about what this feeling was, he was interrupted by Shen Yuan. Okay. Don't talk about other men as soon as we meet, okay? We haven't had a good time in a long time, brothers, let's get high. Sheng Yuan didn't want to have a rare meeting where all the topics revolved around this man, Fu Yunting. What kind of brothers? They are obviously sisters. Sheng Yuyue and Meng Qin refuted Sheng Yuan's words at the same time, and then the three of them looked at each other and smiled. After Sheng Yuan got involved in their group of sisters and best friends, the two of them always liked to tease Sheng Yuan, saying that he was a beautiful woman. Sheng Yuan didn't bother to argue with them and allowed the two women to make trouble with him. They all had a great time this evening. In a private room with excellent privacy, you can enjoy hot pot, drinking, guessing and singing. The gathering of sisters does not involve gossip, but of course it is just a way to release the accumulated stress. Sheng Yuyue received a call in the middle. Sheng Yuan and Meng Qin were having fun, so she took the phone and walked out of the private room. After answering the phone, she leaned against a wall and stopped a waiter who happened to be passing by. Is there any cigarette? The waiters here have been strictly trained and will try their best to meet all the requirements of customers, let alone just borrowing a cigarette. The waiter immediately took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. It was an ordinary brand, much lower quality than the brand Sheng Yuyue usually smoked, but she didn't mind. At this moment, she just wanted a cigarette to relieve her inner depression. The waiter handed over a cigarette, pressed the lighter and blocked the fire with his other hand. Sheng Yuyue bit the cigarette, lowered her head close to the waiter's hand, lit the cigarette in her mouth, took a deep breath, and frowned slightly. It was a bit thick and I almost choked. She thanked him and the waiter left with a red face. Sheng Yuyue was leaning against the wall, holding a cigarette in her left hand. Her eyes looked a little empty, and no one knew what she was thinking. Secretary Sheng has a very diverse taste. She can flirt with anyone. A familiar voice sounded, and Sheng Yuyue looked up and saw Fu Yunting standing not far away. I didn't expect to encounter this. Fu Yunting, however, was able to quickly detect the loneliness in her eyes. He walked slowly towards her, looked at the cigarette in her hand, took it, and put it into his own mouth without any hesitation. He took a deep breath and exhaled all the smoke onto the woman's face. Chapter 25 The Mysterious Woman Beside Fu Yunting. Sheng Yuyue was stunned for only a moment, then quickly returned to her signature smile. Mr. Fu, what a coincidence. We are really destined to be together. As she spoke, she leaned forward slightly, and her charming face instantly enlarged in front of Fu Yunting's eyes. He put out the cigarette in his hand into the ash bin beside him. He turned to look at the woman in front of him, reached out to grab the back of her neck, and pressed his thin lips against her two red lips. He pried open Sheng Yuyue's teeth forcefully and aggressively, and his tongue tip entered her mouth. The lingering smell of smoke instantly spread in the mouths of both men. For a moment, Sheng Yuyue couldn't tell whether it was his smell or hers. After a while, Fu Yunting let go of the woman who was breathing slightly, and his dark eyes met the woman's eyes. Sheng Yuyue thought he was going to say something unpleasant again, but he actually said nothing. He stood up straight, straightened his slightly messy clothes, and then walked away. What kind of a trick is this? Fu Yunting's sudden appearance disrupted Sheng Yuyue's original thoughts. Originally, she was thinking about him just now, but who knew he would appear in front of her? Raising her hand to brush her hair, she returned to her private room. Sheng Yuan and Meng Qin were still arguing with each other, and Sheng Yuyue sighed and joined their game. At this time, she had no idea that she had become the object of curious discussion among Fu Yunting and his group of brothers. Fu Yunting kissed Sheng Yuyue inexplicably and then returned to the private room. As soon as he entered the door, several brothers gathered around him and looked at him, with a trace of ambiguity in their eyes. He pushed them away, walked to their side and sat down, pouring himself a glass of wine. The woman sitting on the side looked sideways at him, her eyes full of affection and a little hurt. Fu Yunting had just walked out of the private room. After a while, Lu Zijin followed him out of the private room, and happened to see him lowering his head and kissing Sheng Yuyue. He almost cried out in surprise. God knows how much effort he put in to restrain himself from making any sound. He had been hiding in the corner and peeping at the whole process of the handsome man and beautiful woman kissing passionately. It wasn't until they finished that he turned around and ran back to the private room, shouting. Now, everyone in the private room knew about it. Fu Yunting kissed a woman. Who is that? It is Fu Yunting, who has never been close to women and has no ruthlessness or desire. However, he actually bent down and kissed a woman. This is huge news. The only woman in the private room, Li Mo, widened her eyes in disbelief. She grew up with Fu Yunting and his brothers, and she has liked Fu Yunting since childhood. Although Fu Yunting had many women who admired him, it was common knowledge in the capital that he always resisted women getting close to him. She is also the only woman who can get close to Fu Yunting in all these years. Although he always treated her coldly, it made her feel that she was different from other women. She always believed that as long as she could stay with Fu Yunting, one day he would be able to feel her feelings for him. Therefore, she was never in a hurry. She wanted to slowly walk into Fu Yunting's heart. But she didn't expect that there was another woman next to Fu Yunting, and he took the initiative to kiss that woman. Who is that woman? Li Mo was extremely anxious at this moment. Not only did he want to know who that woman was and what she looked like, he also felt unwilling and hurt in his heart. Chapter 26, The Four Great Families of Beijing. Yunting, Zijin said he saw you with a woman just now, what about you? Li Mo looked at Fu Yunting and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Upon hearing this, Fu Yunting simply picked up the wine glass on the table without even looking at her or even responding. The words that Li Mo asked were like a small stone thrown into the distance, without even the slightest sound being heard. She bit her lower lip in grievance. When Lu Zijin and others saw this, they all knew that Li Mo had walked into trouble. Fu Yunting never likes others to pry into his affairs, even if they are brothers. Unless he wants to say it himself, there is absolutely no way you can get any information from him. Although they were all very curious, no one dared to test his bottom line. At this moment, Li Mo had not yet been kicked out by Fu Yunting, which was already considered a great respect. Zhang Qinan spoke at the right time to break the awkward atmosphere. Yunting, come over and continue playing mahjong. I don't believe I can't beat you tonight. Fu Yunting stood up, walked to the mahjong table, reached out to touch a mahjong tile, and the corners of his mouth curled up. You may just have to change your faith tonight. Sitting down, they continued playing mahjong. Li Mo sat aside and no one paid any attention to her. The four major families in Beijing are headed by the Fu family, followed by the Lu family, the Zhan family and the Li family. The four families used to live in the same yard, and the people were about the same age, so they played together since they were young. Li Mo is the youngest of the four. She was very cute when she was a child, and the three boys would often give in to her. After growing up, Lu Zijin's personality is still as noisy as a child, but Zhang Qinan is much calmer. The one who has changed the most is Fu Yunting. He is extremely cunning and aloof. He either keeps silent or makes people doubt their lives when he speaks. Li Mo still gives people the feeling of a girl next door like when she was a child, but most of the time she is well behaved and sensible, and sometimes she reveals a little princess temperament. There was always light in her eyes when she looked at Fu Yunting, and anyone could see her admiration for Fu Yunting. Lu Zijin didn't know whether she had tried to confess her feelings to Fu Yunting, but even if she had, Fu Yunting would probably have rejected her. After entering puberty, although Li Mo still followed them like she did when she was a child, Fu Yunting no longer gave in to her like he did when they were children. Instead, he almost treated her like air. But Li Mo didn't care at all. As long as they had a party, Li Mo would definitely come. Who? Fu Yunting pushed over the mahjong tiles beside him and won again. Lu Zijin sighed repeatedly and shouted, "You are so stupid again. Are you going to let me live?" Fu Yunting's mouth corners curled up slightly. From Li Mo's perspective, his heroic look with a bit of ruffian vibe made her heart beat faster again. That's not right, it's a mess. When Zhang Qinan's voice sounded, Fu Yunting's mouth was frozen before he could retract the curve. Lu Zijin rubbed his eyes and laughed out loud. Fu Yunting, you actually have come to this day. It's really amazing. Yunting, you actually made such a mistake. Zhang Qinan was also surprised. Anyone could make such a low-level mistake, but it was absolutely impossible for Fu Yunting to do so. But today, two impossible things happened to Fu Yunting in a row. Chapter 27, Making Bad Friends. Fu Yunting threw out all his chips and then stood up. Let's go. I don't want to play anymore. Ha 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 ha, Yunting, do you feel embarrassed? It's okay. We are brothers, and I won't tell anyone. Lu Zijin said while laughing. Fu Yunting automatically ignored his laughter and walked out of the private room. Damn it, he was distracted just now, thinking of the woman borrowing a cigarette from the waiter, and an emotion that he couldn't understand arose in his heart, and he accidentally exploded. Beauty is really misleading. Fu Yunting stopped playing, and they followed him out of the private room. Just then, Sheng Yuyue and Shen Yuan walked out carrying a drunk Meng Qin. The two sides met each other. Fu Yunting frowned. He knew the vice president of Sheng Group, but how could he be with Sheng Yuyue? Moreover, it looks like the relationship is pretty good. Mr. Shen, what a coincidence. Shen Yuan was also a little shocked when he saw Fu Yunting, but he quickly hid his inner emotions. Mr. Fu, it's indeed a coincidence. Fu Yunting nodded and turned his eyes to the woman standing on the other side. Mr. Fu seems to have no business dealings with Mr. Shen recently. Secretary Shen, are you? When Sheng Yuyue met, she thought about the possibility of being exposed by Fu Yunting, but she never expected that his first reaction was not to doubt her identity, but to suspect her ulterior motives. She was convinced by this brain circuit. Mr. Fu, you misunderstood. The drunk one is my friend, and Mr. Shen is her boyfriend. He came to pick up my friend. Behind Fu Yunting stood Lu Zijing and Zhang Chenan. When Lu Zijing saw Sheng Yuyue, his eyes were shining. He couldn't find any adjectives to describe Sheng Yuyue's beauty. Her facial features were three-dimensional and had an unignorable brightness, but every expression on her face revealed coldness and arrogance. The charming and seductive woman in front of him was the one who made Fu Yunting bend down and kiss her just now. It turns out that Fu Yunting likes this one. No wonder he refused so many beauties who offered themselves to him before. This woman is truly the most beautiful and natural-looking one he has ever seen. He was so excited that he pulled Zhang Chenan's arm and shook it continuously, suppressing his surging emotions and screaming in his heart. Zhang Chenan shook off his hand in disgust. He then leaned close to Zhang Chenan's ear and whispered to him the shocking news he had discovered. Although the sound was not loud, Li Mo, who was standing behind them, still heard it. She looked forward and happened to see Sheng Yuyue looking at Fu Yunting. Her eyes when looking at Fu Yunting didn't seem to have much emotion, but a little cold. He couldn't see Fu Yunting's expression, but Fu Yunting was exuding a cold air at this moment. The look in his eyes when he looked at Sheng Yuyue seemed to be getting colder and colder, probably because he saw that Sheng Yuyue was lying. He nodded and then made a gesture of invitation. Then Mr. Shen, please go ahead and invite me. Shen Yuan nodded and walked in front with Sheng Yuyue and Meng Qin. Fu Yunting walked behind the three of them, his eyes always falling on Sheng Yuyue, his eyes dark and unclear. It wasn't until Meng Qin was put into the car that Shen Yuan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Sheng Yuyue, you are a scammer. Sheng Yuyue slammed the car door directly. She'll leave it to you. After saying a few words, she walked proudly to find her car. Just now, because they were afraid of meeting Fu Yunting again in the parking lot, they had to put Meng Qin into Shen Yuan's car. At this time, Shen Yuan looked at Meng Qin, who was drunk in the back seat, and felt that he had really made a bad friend by mistake. Chapter 28. If you lose your virginity, you will lose your heart. As soon as Fu Yunting got into the car, he dialed Song Qi's phone number. Investigate Xinxia. I want to see all her information tomorrow morning at the latest. Fu Yunting always felt that his secretary did not have the temperament of an ordinary woman. She was very capable at work, and had a toughness about her. Sometimes, one could inadvertently see that she seemed to have an innate arrogance that came from being in a high position. But sometimes, in front of him, she had a kind of tenderness that seemed artificial but not inconsistent. She seemed to have many sides, like a series of mysteries, waiting for him to uncover them one by one. Since it is a mystery, let him peel off the fog bit by bit. Thinking of this, he called Song Qi again. No need to check. Song Qi on the other end of the phone was holding the phone in his hand with a puzzled look on his face. Sheng Yuyue, hiding in the car, watched Fu Yunting's car drive away, and then she breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to start the car, someone knocked on her window. She turned around and saw a cute girl. She rolled down the window and politely asked the other party, "What's the matter?" At this moment, Li Mo saw Sheng Yuyue up close, and an emotion called jealousy grew uncontrollably in his heart. Who are you to Yunting? Sheng Yuyue has never been willing to waste even a second on such uneducated and meaningless questions. Li Mo had just finished asking when Sheng Yuyue rolled up the car window, stepped on the accelerator, and drove away. Leaving behind was Li Mo standing there, looking angry and unwilling. Along the way, Sheng Yuyue seemed to treat the accelerator under her feet as Fu Yunting, and she wished she could crush him with one foot. Yunting, Yunting. Who? Who? Oh, if you tell me, I'm afraid you'll have to jump into the river and commit suicide. You lowly bastard, aren't you not interested in women? Where did this girl next door come from? Sheng Yuyue gripped the steering wheel with both hands and muttered to herself with gritted teeth. When she realized her inexplicable emotion, she had just arrived at the garage of the villa. She braked suddenly and crashed into the wall. But she was in no mood to care about her Koenigsegg. She sat in the car alone, wondering why she was feeling jealous. In her 20 years of life, apart from her father during her childhood, there were only two men around her, her grandfather and Sheng Yuyue. Although she had many suitors, she never even had the desire to look at them. If it weren't for the child marriage, she probably would never have gotten married in her life. If her new husband had not been such a disgrace to her status, she would not have lurked around him and worked as a secretary. But at this moment, she discovered that she had developed an inexplicable feeling towards Fu Yunting without knowing when. Damn it, a woman really can't lose her virginity so easily. If you lose your body, you lose your heart. Uncle Tian heard the noise and ran to the garage. He saw that the car had cracked the bricks on the garage wall. Sheng Yuyue was still sitting in the car, frowning, and no one knew what she was thinking. He knocked on the car window. Sheng Yuyue came to her senses, opened the car door and got out. Are you okay? Uncle Tian, I'm fine. As she spoke, she walked into the house. It's all right, it's all right. Tomorrow, should I have someone send you the same car again, or do you want to change the model of the car? Uncle Tian is indeed the butler of the Fu family, and he really considers all aspects very carefully. No need, Uncle Tian. Just ask someone to drive the car to have it repaired tomorrow. Sheng Yuyue knew that Fu Yunting was wealthy, but she still did not advocate extravagance and waste. Besides, these two Koenigseggs are her favorite cars, so how can she just change them?